Assalamu alaikum. In this lecture, we will discuss non-verbal communication. By now, we have talked about verbal communication and how through words we communicate our message. How formally we do that and how informally we do that. By now, we are aware of difference between formal and informal communication. Now, in this lecture, we will discuss in detail what is the importance of non-verbal communication and how different parts of our body and how our body language helps us communicate better. And how can we understand another person's communication through nonverbal cues. Body language. So basically, by body language, we mean the nonverbal communication because it does not involve any words or verbal communication. So there are other parts of the body that are involved in helping us develop different cues in nonverbal communication. Okay, so body language is a form of nonverbal communication. Body language is the unspoken element because it is not spoken, there are not any words involved that we use to reveal our true feelings and emotions. Nonverbal communication and body language is kind of involuntary communication through which we can reveal our true feelings and emotions, and also we can understand other person's true intentions and true feelings when they're communicating. Because words might lie, but body language cannot be lied. Our gestures, facial expressions, and posture determine our body language. So, what are our gestures? What are facial expressions? How different? How our face give us different expressions, and how our posture. By posture, we mean what is our hand language, what is our how we are standing, how we are sitting, and are we feeling comfortable or not. So, all these things, all our different body parts determine our posture. So all these things help us understand the body language. So we need to understand body language, one, because we have to give information, because when we are communicating, okay, when we are on the production end, for example, when we are speaking, we have to be aware of our body language to give an appropriate message, okay, so that we can match what is our verbal communication with our non-verbal communication. Second, we need to understand body language cues because it will help us understand the message of the communicator. For example, in the case when we are on receiving end of the communication, then we can use body language cues and non-verbal communication cues to understand the message appropriately. When we are able to read these signs, we can use it to our advantage, okay, because then we can distinguish between the truth or the real nature of the verbal communication. So nonverbal communication is basically an additional and handler information that provides us with an opportunity to gauge the depth of verbal communication and to know whether it is true or not and how far it is strong in its true feelings and true emotions. We can also use it to adjust our body language so that we appear more positive, engaging, and approachable. Okay, so we can adjust our body language and learn what is more effective body language. A part of making it in cognizance with verbal communication, non-verbal communication also help us to be more confident, to appear more positive and engaging. So in a way that people are more engaging towards it and they more want to listen to us and we can convey our message better. Okay, so let's see. Do you know what are signs of nervousness? You can think for a minute. Okay, so what could be some certain signs of nervousness? How do you know when a person is nervous? Let's say, for example, we are having presentations in the classroom. Okay, so when I call somebody on the stage, when would you say that he's nervous? What are some of the cues? Okay, similarly, signs of lack of interest. Can you think of any signs that will show you that someone is giving you no interest or they lack interest in the communication with you? All right. For example, I'm speaking with someone and I find out that they're not as much as into the conversation as I am interested. Okay, so there are different signs of communication that show us that there is a lack of interest in the communication. All right. Then we have signs of confidence. Let's say, for example, someone is on the stage. Okay, for example, the teacher is speaking on the stage. When do you know that the teacher is confident in what he is speaking? And when do you know that they are not so confident and they are nervous? All right. So these are very common things that we gauge through non-verbal communication or body language. I hope all of you or most of you would be aware of at least some signs of nervousness and confidence and interest or lack of interest and all such things. Okay, we will discuss in detail how we can gauge all these signs for different responses. Let's see. In some instances, what comes out of our mouth and what you communicate through your body language may be two totally different things. Okay, we already talked about it that verbal communication needs to be in parallel with our non-verbal communication. Sometimes we would be speaking something, but our body language would not agree with that. Okay, so we have to be careful that our body language is in parallel with our verbal communication, with what we are saying. Okay, why does nonverbal communication matter? Your nonverbal communication cues, that would say the way you listen, look, move, and react, tell the person you are communicating with whether or not you care, if you're truthful, and how well you're listening. Okay, in this example, for example, we are on the receiving end of the communication. For example, you all are attending the classroom right now. Okay, and if when I see you, okay, when I see your posture, when I see your facial expressions, that would give me an idea that if you're listening to me or not, or if you are thinking about something else. Okay, how do you move and react? That would show me somehow that whether you are interested in this topic or you're just ignoring it, or you're just here for the sake of attendance, or you're just seeing this video. Okay, but when I see your face, I can gauge what thing interests you, what thing does not interest you. Okay, so when you see someone communicating non-verbally, you can gauge whether they are truthful, okay, and how much they are listening to you. All right, so it helps us gauge the true intentions and true feelings behind the face. Okay, next is when your non-verbal signals match up with the words. That means the word what you're saying, the verbal communication, and non-verbal signals or cues you are saying, they increase trust, clarity, and rapport. That means when my body language and my facial expressions and all these facial or non-verbal cues, they are in parallel with my verbal cues. Okay, that means what I'm saying and my body language, they both agree. Then definitely you would guys would increase your trust in me and what I'm speaking, and my message would be clearer to you. Okay, but if my body language is not in cognizance or is not parallel with my nonverbal cues, then you would lose your interest, you would lose your trust in me, and you would not understand what I'm saying. My message would not be as smooth to you as you would expect. When you don't, okay, when they don't, that means your verbal cues and non-verbal cues do not match. They can generate tension, mistrust, and confusion. If you want to become a better communicator, it's important to become more sensitive not only to the body language and non-verbal cues of others, but also of your own. So, when you want to become a better communicator, you want to communicate your message effectively, you have to be a little bit more sensitive to what other people's body language is saying and how you can improve your body language so that you receive the message more appropriately and you will convey your message more appropriately as well. There are various types of nonverbal communication. Okay, so these are different parts of different body and how we can see them to gauge an appropriate message. We will discuss very briefly here, but with practice you can improve upon your nonverbal cues and understanding nonverbal cues as well. Facial expressions. The human face is extremely expressive. Okay, different parts of our face, my eyes, my eyebrows, my cheeks, my lips, and the tension on my face. All these things are very expressive, and they give us a clear idea that what the other person is thinking. Okay, whether the person is interested or not, whether the person is confident or not. So all these things, they provide us with a clear information. For example, when I'm in a classroom, I look at your faces, okay? Then some person frowns at something I say, then I would gauge that whether they are not understanding my point. But if you keep on, nodding your head, then I would say yes, they are getting my example. Okay, this is how I see, okay, this point needs further more elaboration, because I see too many faces with tension. Okay, so facial expressions are very important. So when, especially when you're on stage or when you are on giving end, then you have to be careful about your listeners facial expressions. As a teacher, I can tell you this is very important to be clear in your classroom. Okay, so for example, even two friends are talking, when you're giving presentations or in any case of conversation or communication, facial cues are very important. They give you a clear idea what the person is thinking at the moment. All right, so if they're not even speaking, still you can engage and you can accommodate and merge your communication or your message accordingly. All right, so the face is extremely expressive. It is able to convey countless emotions without saying a word. Okay, so whenever there is no word, even a single word is spoken, but still you can get the message from the facial expressions very clearly. Facial expressions are universal. Okay, so most of the times facial expressions could be understood. If the frown means tension, similarly a smile means happiness. Okay, nodding means yes. Certain facial cues or for certain facial responses might vary from culture to culture, okay? But we are not going in detail there. Now, here we are talking about facial expressions in our context in English and Sindhi, for example, let's say, okay? So we will just stick to that. The facial expression give us a uniform idea from across people to people in these languages. The facial expressions for happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, disgust are the same across many cultures. Okay, so many people would smile when they are happy. Okay, they would frown, they would be frowning when they are angry or they do not understand or confused. Okay, so we all know when we feel fear from certain people's faces, okay, when they are disgusted or so on. Okay, so we have to be, first and foremost thing is that we have to be careful of facial expressions. So when we are speaking, okay, next time when we are communicating or we are presenting anything on the stage, we have to look at our audience, okay, and see what their facial expressions are saying. Or for example, if two people are communicating, I'm just talking to a friend or a stranger on a bus, for example. Okay, so I have to gauge from the facial expressions and whether they are interested in the topic that I'm speaking or they want me to switch the topic. Okay, whether they are interested in me speaking or they want to speak. So all these things, whether they are in good mood today or they are having some trouble. So all these things, we can have a fair idea, or we can have a, at least some idea through their facial expressions. Moving on, we have body movement and posture. Body movement and posture, they also play a very critical role in understanding body language. Consider how your perceptions of people are affected by the way they sit, walk, stand, or hold their hand. We cannot deny how we understand people and how we perceive people by the way they sit, walk, stand. Okay, for example, some person is lousy in their walking, okay, or some person is sitting very confidently. Okay, some person is very is not on a steady path and they are just shaking. Okay, there could be lots of stumbling in their walking. So there could be lots of ways through the way we can perceive a person, from the way they sit, the way they walk, and the way they stand. If they're standing on their own, okay, we see that they are confident. But if they need a support to stand by, that means that will tell us about the person, that the person is not as much stable. Okay, similarly, if a person is sitting confidently, we can gauge that these people are confident. So all these things give us a certain perception about the people. Okay, these things are not universal. I'm not asking you to judge someone based on only these nonverbal cues, but the point is these nonverbal cues, this form of communication, give us a certain idea to make our communication strong. The way you move and carry yourself communicates a wealth of information to the world. So that's why it is always important and always suggested that you should be careful about your body movement and posture. This type of nonverbal communication includes your posture, bearing, stance, and subtle movements you make. Okay, so all these movements that your body makes and how your posture is stained, so these all things vary and they matter in your nonverbal communication a lot. Moving on, we have gestures. Gestures are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. You may wave, point, beacon, or use your hands when arguing or speaking, often expressing yourself with gestures without thinking. Gestures, how do we point our hands in certain way or in certain direction? Okay, when I'm standing like a robot, okay, my hands are hidden and then I'm just continuously speaking. Okay, you would like get bored and you would not enjoy my conversation as much as you would when I move my hands, when I point out at someone, when I make different gestures with my hands. Maybe sometimes I wave, maybe I sometimes point at something, okay, maybe up, down, so on. I mean, when I make different shapes with my hands, okay, just to make my message even more clear. Okay, sometimes you do not get the verbal message as much as you get from the gesture. Some people are more of visual learners. Okay, those people would not gain the message from your words as much as they would gain the message from your gestures, your hand movements, your facial expressions, and all these things. So you have to be careful and you have to show how active and confident you are in your speech so that you actively use your gestures. Okay, but it is also again important that you should not be open to misinterpretation. You have to be really careful that how you're using your gestures so no one understands something else that they want to understand from your gestures. Next we have is eye contact. Eye contact is again very important. I've already always highlighted this point that whenever you're communicating with someone, maintain a good eye contact. Okay, by good eye contact, that does not mean so much stressful or not totally avoiding. Okay, when you stare at someone constantly, it might make them, a little bit less confident. Okay, they might get confused that why are you staring him like that. Okay, so you have to you have to give them a particular space and you have to maintain a light eye contact as well. Okay, but you cannot just completely ignore them by looking at something entirely different. Okay, so maintain eye contact when they're speaking. It would show that you are interested in their conversation. Since the visual sense is dominant for most people, eye contact is an especially important type of nonverbal communication. The way you look at someone can communicate many messages, okay, many things, including interest, affection, hostility, or attraction. So when you look at someone, we often show affection. Okay, when I'm looking at someone with lots of love, that would show that I'm interested in them. Okay, and I'm interested in their conversation. I'm interested what they are trying to say. Similarly, if I'm just staring at someone with fear, okay, so that would show that I'm afraid of them. Okay, so that would mean I would not be able to maintain eye contact. But if I stare at someone continuously, that would mean that might be embarrassing for them. Okay, it would not be a good sign. So you have to be very careful when maintaining eye contact. Eye contact is also important in maintaining the flow of conversation and for gauging the other people's interest and response. All right, through eye contact, you can gauge whether the person is interested or not. If they keep on moving their eyes somewhere else, they constantly check their cell phones and then they do not maintain the eye contact, then you might gauge that they are not interested in your conversation. And then you move on and switch the topic or something like that. So, eye contact is very helpful. It helps us determine a certain number of things. Moving on, we have touch. We communicate a great deal through touch. Think about the very different messages given by a weak handshake, a warm beer hug, or patronizing pat on the head and controlling grip of the arm, for example. Okay, so all these are certain examples that can help us determine how touch is important in nonverbal cues or nonverbal communication. For example, someone shakes your hand very weakly. You would say that they're not as much as welcoming to you or they're not as much as interested in you. But if someone gives you a warm handshake or a warm hug, that would mean they are too welcoming to you, and they are really interested in you, that in a sense that they really welcome you. Okay, so similarly, if someone pats on your head, that would mean maybe an appreciation, maybe a praise. So similarly, when there's a controlling grip of the arm, that might mean different thing. Okay, so we all need to be careful of all these touch responses and how they communicate a particular message. Space. Have you ever felt uncomfortable during a conversation because the other person is standing too close or invading your space? Okay, this is a very important point to remember, that we all have a personal space in which we cannot allow anyone. Okay, so when we are conversing with someone, we at least expect them to appreciate or acknowledge our personal space, and they do not invade into our space, because that would make us uncomfortable. Okay, we need to maintain certain space, certain physical space that we are speaking here of, and it depends upon culture to culture and situation to situation. Okay, and also in a relationship, for example, when a teacher and a student is speaking, they would require a little bit more physical space, but when two friends are speaking, they might stand a little bit closer. Okay, so it would vary from relationship to relationship, culture to culture, and situation to situation. But again, in all the things, physical space gives us a clear idea that what might be the relationship between these two people. Okay, so it again helps us gauge a little bit of non-verbal communication cues. You can use physical space to communicate many different nonverbal messages, okay, including signals of aggression, dominance, affection, and all these things. Okay, so whenever you are communicating, you need to be careful of all these cues: touch, space, gestures, eye contact, facial expressions, body posture, and all these things. Then we also have voice. Okay, what is the pitch of our voice, how loud we are when we are speaking? Okay, so these all things also convey a message. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. All right, when you speak, other people read your voice in addition to listening your words. So when we're talking about verbal communication, we give emphasis to what the words are being said. Okay, but as a part of non-verbal cues, we give importance to how the words are said. Okay, how loud those words are, what is the pitch of those words, and in what tone the words are spoken. Things they pay attention to include your timing and your pace, how speedy you are talking, okay, and how slowly you are talking, how loud you speak, what is your tone, what is your inflection, and sounds that convey understanding, such as uh-huh and so on. These words, for example, if you continuously give me these cues, that would means that you're interested and you are into the conversation and you're understanding what I'm saying. Okay, but when you sit like very silently and very boringly, that would make me feel that you're not into the topic as much as I want you to be. Okay, think about how your tone of voice indicates sarcasm, anger, affection, or confidence. Okay, so we know sometimes we use similar words but in different tone, to that completely changes the message. For example, in Sindhi, for example, if I say shabash, that would mean I'm praising you, okay, and appreciating you for what you have done. But if I say shabash, so that would mean that it is sarcastic, or that means I'm saying that what you have done is not acceptable. What you have done is something, that you shouldn't have done. So this is how the tone would vary and the message is completely changed. Okay, so voice is very important. So you can think of some other examples where how your tone can indicate sarcasm, how your tone can show anger. Okay, when you are a little bit fierce in your voice, that would show anger. Okay, and how when you talk to someone you love in your family, okay, and how's your tone there, and how your tone shows confidence. Okay, when you're talking speedily and you're talking with confidence, that voice tone would be different. Okay, but when you're shaky and you've given lots of stumbles and all, that would show that you're nervous. So your voice and the tone, that also matter a lot when you're communicating. So you have to be careful that your speech is on a particular tone according to what your message is. So all these cues, they have to be in parallel with your verbal cues so that they go hand in hand and no one can get confused or misinterpret your message, and they gain clarity and trust in what you're saying. In short, to summarize, bad body language is equal to ineffective communication. If you're not as good in your body language, that would mean that you're not an effective communicator. Okay, if you want to be a good public speaker, if you want other people to engage in your conversation, you have to be careful of your body language along with your verbal communication. Okay, so previously when we have discussed verbal communication, formal communication, informal communication, we know that we have to vary our communication or conversation according to the context we are speaking. Similarly, whenever we are speaking, we need to be careful of our body language and non-verbal cues as well to maintain an effective communication and engaging communication when the listener or the people at the receiving end are into our conversation and they enjoy our conversation. All right, that's it for this lecture. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments, you can put in the comment section or we can discuss them in the live session. Thank you so much.